Committee of the Whole is back in order. I do note that in U and V, Office of Veterans Affairs, Medical Referral Office, I don't see representatives here, and I'm not going to wait for them, so we're going to jump to the Guam Board of Accountancy, and when they do come, we'll get back to them. We're at the Guam Board of Accountancy. I'd like to welcome Mr. Dave Sanford.
Thank you.
And Mr. Santos, how are you doing there? And with that, I'll start with Senator Shimizu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Guam Board of Accountancy, Dave and Michelle, you're not employees, right? You're the board.
Actually, I'm the executive director, and Michelle is the assistant deputy director, if you will, or executive director under an administrative services contract. So no, we're not actually employees of the government of Guam.
Okay, so under an administrative service contract, and they are board members, right?
Yes.
How many members of the board? If I may?
Five board members.
You have 5 board members from the industry, and who are represented on the boards? Are they represented by different industries, or they're just the citizen volunteers appointed by the governor?
Well, I guess you'd say they're industry representatives in that they're all CPAs. We have 2 CPAs from public practice CPA firms. Actually 3, I guess, from public accounting firms, and then 1 from private industry, and then the public auditor is also on our board.
And this is by
appointment of the governor.
No, but is the board composition by law saying how many from private, how many from public, or is it just whoever the governor chooses?
No, Senator, the composition of the board is not specified other than that they be actively licensed Guam CPAs. But from what background, there's no specification. Okay.
So it's a general membership, but the one requirement by law is that you must have a CPA to be in there. So the governor can appoint people from the private sector. He can appoint people from the public sector. He can appoint people from the federal system. In fact, he can appoint anything within the population of CPAs.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay. Dave, one of the things that I was looking at, and again, I'm just got elected again, so I have to have a little learning curve here. Mr. Chairman, on W it says Guam Board of Accountancy General Fund. Then I looked at the other one, Guam Contractors Licensing Board, Guam Contractors License Board Fund. It's not a general fund. Board of Professional Engineers, Architect, and Land Surveys, and so forth. It says board fund. They're not general fund. What is this distinction between, I say, the Board of Accountancy to the Board of Contractors to the Board of Engineers, and how is that, and that you're here, and your source of funding comes from the general fund and not necessarily from the fees that you collect?
Actually, Senator, up until the previous budget law, I think the FY07 budget law, we were a special fund, just like the Appeals Board or the Contractors Board, and we had the authority to collect our own funds and pay our own bills, and we had a surplus built up, and the previous Budget Act basically combined us into the general fund, did away with our special fund, and swept all the surplus out of our fund. So what the distinction is between us as a board regulating professional licensees and the other 2 boards, we don't really understand what that distinguishment is. We don't know what the difference is, but we got swept into the general fund.
Including what you had surplus?
Yes.
So the reward was they took the reward for having surplus?
It was about $1 million, and I guess
about $1 million.
Yeah.
I guess the difference is really just in the industry, the professionals. You're a professional accountancy, the other one's a contractor, and the other one is a professional engineer. And because I believe it or not, I read this lengthy thing, and I just come to. But let me ask this question. Although your source is coming into the general fund, that can be a dedicated fund. and the legislature still needs to reappropriate it, Mr. Chair, just like we do with the Guam Contractors Licensing Board.
Right.
They put it into they collect all the fees, put it in there, and then they come back here and ask us to reappropriate it.
Well, in the past, as a special fund, the revenues, we were appropriated, but we did collect all the monies and accounted for it in the special fund, and but it was run through the legislature, or should have been run through the legislature every year to be appropriated. We do actually generate our own revenues. We actually are probably one of the few boards that generate more revenues than we consume, and that we generate somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 a year in revenue, and our expenses have been around $450 or $350 to $450. So we had about $100,000 to $200,000 surplus for the last 2 to 3 years.
Let me just ask, I was not here because this was the last budget, Mr. Chair, right? That is in the miscellaneous, or no, it's in the current budget act. Just very quickly, during the time that they did the budget act, when this was being, did by any chance you had the opportunity to come in and testify, or did you wake up one morning and say, hello, General Fund, goodbye?
It was a telegraphed punch.
It was a telegraphed
I always
punch.
telegraph my punches.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of woke up one morning and found out we no longer existed as a fund or an entity or a board that could approve anything.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering why there was never an appropriation when there should have been an appropriation.
Okay. So what happened is that now, but the other agencies still have to come out of the general fund, don't they? Because they're here, Mr. Chair, on the on what we're hearing today. They're coming out of the budget fund anyway, general fund, right? Although it's special funds. I'm looking at page 17 and 18. On 17, line number 23, and then on 18, line 1 and 3. Basically, what it does there is that there is a special board fund for each of the other two categories, and
If I
you
may,
okay.
What we argued in the past in the budget, in the FY07 Budget Act, when we found out about it, was that we felt like we should be treated the same as the other funds, which means essentially we'd be a special revenue fund and we're subject to appropriation, and then at the end of every fiscal year, whatever surplus we had would be swept into the general fund. And that I think that's exactly the way the other boards work even today.
Okay.
I don't quite understand why we couldn't do that versus just being lumped totally into the general fund, because in the process of the changes now, we essentially have a hard time getting any of our bills paid, to the point where we have our vendors asking us if they can deduct their dues and things from the revenues they owe us. So it's getting a little difficult.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I, if I'm not out of order, I know that the rules of engagement had to do with not entertaining anything other than cuts. Mm-hmm. But I like to make a motion. Mm-hmm. It's not to increase or remain status quo, but to be able to bring back the Guam Board of Accountancy.
That is out of order, Senator.
That's out of order.
The only problem with last year, I will make a comment. I'm not going to answer
Sure.
any questions here. I didn't have enough time to do a lot of punches. I only had a couple of punches. There were supposed to be more punches.
So
it was
you're
going to be telegraphed. I'll
will
get
you-
to it in the 08 budget.
Will you be doing it? Will you be punching out on this?
I'm going to work with my colleagues.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why I out of respect, I asked, would I, because it's had nothing to. I mean, I don't think I'm in violation of the rules of engagement that we agreed not to increase or to decrease. But is there is a motion? You rule me out of order that my motion is out of order simply because I want to be able to.
We're going to entertain motions to delete.
Only
Or
to delete. Okay.
to
So
reduce.
no.
We're almost finished, by the way, folks. And once we get through that, then we can do. You guys will.
Okay, so
do
Mr.
whatever you
Chairman,
want.
thank you. So what I want to do, just write on your little note there that I would like to be able at that point in time to restore back the Guam Board of Accountancy similar to that of the Contractors Board and have their own board funds. because I think that's something that we should reward. They raised an additional $1 million, and they woke up the next morning and they got the punch.
No, I assure you, this
you.
was a punch that was. I said it was telegraphed.
I'm not sure how it was telegraphed, Senator. But
Okay.
No, we've had our meetings.
Okay, but
As a matter of fact, I will tell. In fact, since you did speak up, Mr. Sanford, you do realize the law says it was subject to legislative appropriation. So unfortunately, there was a special fund that was being utilized without legislative appropriation. But we'll get to that in a later date.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
continue,
Mr.
Senator
I'm not finished yet. But thank you for that, because I mentioned at the beginning, Mr. Chairman, that I wasn't there then, so please excuse my trying to see why is there a difference in the language on two other professional boards as there is to this, and I just found out today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Shimizu. Senator Guthertz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's interesting. I think the Guam Board of Accountancy has really done some good work over the last decade. And I know that part of what you've done is actually attract people to Guam who come here and spend money to take the CPA exams. And that's how you generated that nearly $1 million in monies. Am I correct? Much of it came from giving the CPA exams on Guam? Yes or no?
I was just advised that I should be quiet.
Oh, no.
By the senator.
Mr. Sanford,
Yes.
I'm saying answer the questions by the senators. That's what I'm saying. But if you're going to make a comment to me in the side, I do not require your comments.
Okay.
So answer the questions of the senators.
Yes,
Thank
Senator.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm familiar with that initiative because the university was involved. School of Business folks were involved, helping out, I remember. And of course, the School of Business accountancy program sort of oversees the classes in Japan to help prepare the students from Japan that come here to take the CPA tests. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. I'm concerned about the fact that you lost those monies because I know you reinvested some of those monies in helping to upgrade the accountants on Guam through various training programs that you sponsored and other initiatives jointly with other organizations. Am I correct?
Yes, Senator.
So what has been the impact since those funds were sort of brought away from you to the general fund? How has that impacted the Guam Board of Accountancy?
Well, at this point, Senator, the only one that's really impacted, I think, is me, because under the administrative services contract that I hold, we're responsible for operating the Board of Accountancy. We have continued to operate the Board of Accountancy status quo. I continue to pay for the operations of the board out of my pocket, and yet I'm at any one point in time normally owed about 6 months worth of back payments from the government of Guam. So I'm not sure how I would say it's impacted. We've been able to change the law through the efforts of the good Senator Calvo. We've increased the Guam candidates coming to Guam, and I think we'll have more, and we'll have more Guam licensees. But other than the fact that it's harder to get paid because everything comes out of the general fund, which doesn't have a cash allotment, of course, and which makes people reluctant to want to pay our bills, then I'm not sure the board has been impacted.
I see. So, Mr. Sanford, you're sort of a private contractor
Yes.
operating the Guam Board of Accountancy day-to-day operations
Yes.
on behalf of the board.
Yes, under administrative services contract.
Mr. Chairman, this is another example of privatization gone wrong. Here we have a very competent private business whose services were solicited to assist the Guam Board of Accountancy, day-to-day operations, make sure all the compliances are being met by the accounting profession, reporting to the board, organizing the meetings for the board, and they're not getting paid. Before they were getting paid, but now because their monies are going to the general fund, they can't access any monies to pay their contractor. This sounds like what happened at the Guam Public School System when the private maintenance companies could not get paid and still are not getting paid in a timely manner as vendors of the Guam Public School System. So this is another example of where we have some difficulties keeping our commitments to private businesses that we contract to service government to help us actually avoid having to have a government entity do this kind of work. I'm concerned about that, and I agree with Senator Shimizu that I think your special fund should be restored to you. And I also believe that this should be viewed as an incentive to expand Guam as a recognized ethical location to conduct the accountancy exam in. I know we're getting some competition in Northern Marianas. They were doing the same thing. If they're not doing it now, they were doing it, bringing over folks to take the test there. But I would like to see this service expanded because it brings tourists to Guam. When these folks come to Guam, they stay here maybe 2, 3, 4 days, take the accountancy exam. They stay in our hotels. They spend money in our restaurants. They go to our stores as part of their brief visit to the island. And so you're generating revenue for the island, for the business community as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I think I agree with Senator Shimizu. Later on, when the opportunity comes up, I think we should restore their special fund account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Guthertz. Senator Pangilinan?
Thank you very much. Dave, who sets the fees for the license as well as the testing service?
The licensing fees have been set, I guess, by the board. They've been in effect for quite a while, and we actually haven't changed any of the license fees, to my knowledge, other than the previous law last April that made one of the license fees. It just brought it in line with the rest of them. But the fees have been the same for quite a while, but they're, I guess, set by the board.
By the board. Yeah. So there's, and does that require the board to do that through the AAA or?
Yes, it's under the AAA.
AAA also.
Now, the fees for actual testing at the test center, the test center is operated under a contract between the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy and the Board of Accountancy, Guam Board of Accountancy. The test center fees are actually set by the three bodies that administer the CPA, Uniform CPA exam, which is the AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, NASBA, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, and Prometric, which actually operates the testing center.
The testing center.
And that's based on their cost. Those fees are supposedly set at a level that would generate, at an overall basis, a break even for the three of them.
Okay. Now, the payment for these tests, then, do the applicants pay to the accountancy board and then you pay the testing centers? Or
okay. What happens presently is if you wanted to apply to be a Guam candidate to take the CPA exam, you would apply to the board.
To the board.
The board processes the application and collects your fee, application fee. So that money is deposited from the board into the general fund. Now, once you're approved as an applicant to take the exam, and this is true of not only Guam candidates, but any candidate to take the CPA exam approved by any jurisdiction in the United States, if you wanted to take the test at the Guam Test Center, you sign up through the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, you pay them the fees. Directly. And then they ultimately pay the Guam Board of Accountancy a set fee based on every person
Person.
that actually takes an exam at the center
Okay.
or pays to take an exam at the center.
So you have two revenue streams basically,
Right.
from the applicant for the licensee, and then from the testing center to administer the or to oversee, I guess,
Right.
or to allow the individual to sit for the Guam
The exam, yeah.
exam. Okay.
To actually take the exam.
And then is there a fee then you pay to these three boards?
No, actually, NASBA, it's what I call a triad contract because it's a contract between the AICPA, NASBA, and Prometric, all three of them jointly, to actually administer the exam. The AICPA actually owns the exam and they provide the test questions and content. Prometric actually owns and operates the test centers themselves, and NASBA kind of coordinates the whole thing on the behalf of all the state boards, and has put together what they call a national candidate database, which they operate. And so they essentially collect the fees, and they're responsible for remitting those fees back to the individual agencies.
I see.
And as part of the contract to operate the test center here in Guam, then the board gets, I think, $50 for every exam that's given at the test center for a non-Guam resident. If you're a Guam resident, you don't pay the $50.
Okay, all right. Now, I guess there's been much discussion in terms of the fund and the reason why it was transmitted into or swept basically into the general fund. Now, we have here, I guess, a mechanism where we set the testing fee. We know the administrative cost of running it. We know what it costs to run the program, and we're at even a little bit more than a break-even point. We're trying to find ways in which we can generate revenue for this government. We're looking at fees, cost recovery, and so forth. Here's one that's definitely cost recovery plus a little bit more. Now, and I don't want to jeopardize the ability of that entity to function. And I think, having a mechanism that doesn't allow you to pay your bills on time, administer the programs, and places that in jeopardy, not only for the local applicants, but even greater is the revenue stream that comes from off island. I think that what is always of concern is that there's accountability, and I think that there definitely, as demonstrated by the other professional boards, and in the past, could be there could be an accountability that will allow you to access the funds, meet your operating costs, and then through a certain process remit any excess funds to the general fund. But it bothers me a little that we may be jeopardizing the ability to generate that additional revenue to be remitted into the general fund by having a system that's a bit more cumbersome and doesn't give you access to ensure that we meet the obligations of the board to the candidates as well as to this triad that works with us in terms of trying to make sure everything goes smooth. We don't want to be able to disrupt that because it's a positive revenue source to the government. And so this idea of restoring the fund, having appropriate legislative oversight over the expenditure of those funds through the appropriation process to ensure that things flow smoothly and we continue to ensure that you don't have more than you need. And when you have enough, then the balance is remitted into general fund. Maybe I think assure that we can continue to manage the program and run it efficiently and effectively and not jeopardize it. So I think that that's something that everyone's going to consider, or at least from the former retiring speakers. And I think that that's something that could be a positive solution to, like you say, just ensuring that everything flows smoothly and efficiently, but understanding that accountability has to be part of the process, as well as that surpluses do not remain there where, and just sit there basically doing nobody any good.
Absolutely, Senator. In the past, we were a special fund, and when I came in, there was a surplus there, but in terms of operations, the monies we collected have always been deposited with the government of Guam Treasurer's Office. The only difference was that it was easier to get things paid because as a fund, as a separate appropriation, and knowing we had the cash allotment, we could get the bills paid. And now we're subject to the same problem that every
Challenges
other,
that the
every
general
other
fund
general
has.
fund, entity has. So.
Yeah, and if we have something good, there's no need to risk it. If we don't have to, and not only that, it can contribute to the general fund. And so I just wanted to set that, I guess, and understand that that's the process and the flow of the revenues and so forth. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your responses.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Senator Respicio, I apologize as well. I know you were supposed to be next, but I apologize.
Okay, no.
I'll give you an extra minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I feel obliged to echo the sentiments of the previous speakers, and I want to point out that it's done a lot to provide or to, I guess, have additional constraints on the Guam Board of Accountancy just simply by moving your function from getting money from a special fund as opposed to being part of the general fund process. And I think we need to go a step further than what the previous speakers have talked about and require that this special fund be set aside and then you appropriate from that. And Chairman Calvo is correct. All special revenues are subject to the legislative appropriation, but it doesn't mean that the monies that you generate must be deposited into the general fund. And then you get subjected to the other challenges that all the other departments and agencies are faced with the allotment process. And so, Mr. Chairman, I want to help craft an amendment which would go a step further to put all the monies that this entity generates into a special fund, and then let them and then appropriate as much funds as are necessary for them to determine how they can continue to carry on the mandates and have additional revenue. And then at the end of the fiscal year, they can recommend to the legislature, I believe since they're the ones generating the revenue, they should tell the legislature how much of the money they've generated they can spare to forward over to the general fund. Because, I just have the big problem of strangling the goose that lays. In this case, this is a success story. You're a revenue-generating entity, and yet we subject you to the same constraints as others are subjected to the general fund. And this cut that you're faced with right now, this $11,143 cut, I think adds insult to injury. And I'm going to be among those to move that your entity does not get any cuts, because we may be the very point that we recognize this cost recovery and your revenue sustaining. I think it would be very improper of us to provide or to tie their hands and prevent them from raising the much needed revenue. Dave, could you just tell me how much have you generated versus how much do you expend?
On average, for the last 3 years, at least since my contract was in effect in 2004, started in 2004, we've generated an average of around $500,000 a year in revenues, and we spent an average of about $320. So we've probably contributed somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 a year to the general fund over the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I could appreciate why a government such as ours that's cash-strapped will try to grab from any money it has, but I think we're doing the greatest disservice to your entity by not only giving you the money you need, but by taking that monies away from you. So, Ms. Chairman, you count me in as those that want to not only restore their budget, but create a mechanism to put the money they generate into a special fund. I mean, EPA has all these, there's special funds throughout the government of Guam, and they're very specific that they shall not be commingled with the general fund until such time the legislature deems that commingling is necessary. So we should be analyzing the money they generate at the end of the fiscal year, and we ask them how much money they could spare to give to the general fund. I think that's very important. We do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Respicio. Vice Speaker Calvo?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dave, first of all, I want to apologize for the confusion there. usually what happens when the chairman is making a comment, there's not a response to the comment unless there's a question asked.
Point.
And when I made that statement, I wasn't saying not to answer the questions of the body. And again, this is the purpose for why you're here, is when the members of the legislative body have comments or questions, that you answer those questions. So again, my apologies in what confusion may have occurred. That's why I'm down here now.
My apologies, Senator. I'm not used to appearing at these kind of events either. So.
Yeah, okay. And I also want to congratulate you folks. You know, I understand, again, what the Board of Accountancies, again, the progress that has been made over the years. The group that I met with you and Oscar Miyashita last year in the budget. So again, there was no telegraphic punch. I'm going to kind of reiterate what were some of the issues that were discussed at the time. But I also understand, again, the potential. And again, I pass Bank of Hawaii every day, and I see all those folks in from Korea or from Japan that are out here taking their tests. And I understand that this is another market, and not, again, aside from the tourism market, these are folks that have more money to spend. And not only are they contributing to the revenues of the government of Guam in terms of fees being paid, but when they're in here, they're at those hotels and they are spending money. Some of the issues that have occurred and by the way, I will advise the body that when we did have the budget last year, that was something that occurred. I did not push for the elimination of the Guam Board of Accountancy Fund, but I did consider it because, again, some of the issues on the audits that have occurred, and again, even by the Office of Public Auditor, what has occurred over the government of Guam over the decades is there has been the transformation from one general fund into a general fund with many special funds, and every one of these special funds, when they were created, had a purpose and still have a purpose. There was a certain initiative and whether it's an administration or a legislature, and with this initiative or program, the means to pay for it, and with the means to pay for it, some sort of vehicle to ensure, at least from the policymakers that created that program or initiative, that there is some sort of protective funding source. Over the years, as this has occurred, but there has been the creation of about 100 different special funds. And with the creation of all these special funds, obviously there has been complications, again, even with the audits, and again, findings by the public auditor themselves, by the very mere fact of creating more and more funds and creating more and more books. And obviously, Dave, you're an accountant. You understand the complexities that have occurred, and where the tracking of total of all monies coming into the government and the expenditures of all those monies have been more complicated, and that is why we've had some very unfavorable audits on the government of Guam over the years, and including special funds. If you can recall the meeting that we had when we were looking at all the special funds of the government of Guam. In fact, I can recall was the Guam Board of Accountancy coming to meet with me, and then when I did some research on the enabling legislation for funds such as the Guam Board of Accountancy Fund, I did take note, and I made mention to you folks that I'm looking at prior year's budgets and I don't see an appropriation, and then I read the enabling legislation, and my goodness, all monies in this fund are subject to legislative appropriation for use of the board in the pursuit of its authority. And obviously, and I made that point known to you, legally then, whatever spending that had occurred in past years was done without legal authority. And it struck me, but I understood because of the complexities of the current government of Guam accounting system, with the myriad of funds that must be accounted for. This was one fund but again, I commend you folks. You were taking in more money than you were spending, but that money was being spent without legal authority. As we move on to other areas, and in fact, we're looking at the Chamorro Land Trust. Here is another special fund where there, if I can recall the last audit, there was about $1 million in actual cash in that fund, cash. But then if you take a look at what is owed to the general fund, there's a multi-million-dollar deficit. So as we move along, and I tell you, I'm with my colleagues. I know some of my colleagues have broached the idea of maybe reestablishing a special fund. I'm open to it because from my standpoint, I look at you folks. You know what? If there's one group of people that can within the government of Guam with all these funds that probably are best equipped to ensure that debits and credits are in line, and that what monies come in and what monies go out are accounted for. I would figure it's you folks. But then at the same time, I look back at history and I see I don't want to question what happened in the past, but obviously when I took over the reins, some things occurred that shouldn't have occurred. Did not legally occur.
If I may, Senator, let me just say that yes, I think you're correct. When I took over under my contract in September 2004, which was just starting the new fiscal year for FY05, we were questioned, I think, also by your office about the appropriation. What I found out was that for some reason or another, under previous budget acts, I guess the fund itself, the revenues were included, the expenditures weren't, but they had always been just, and I asked the same question, we were always just sent our budget down to the chairman of Ways and Means or the budget office or wherever and waited for something to happen, and nobody ever called. So, but yes, you're correct. I understand that, but if you will, just let me say that I think you'll find that in all the worksheets we submitted for our budgets and revenues, all the worksheets actually added up.
Actually, like I say, when we go back, when I talked to you about telegraphing punches, because I thought earlier I was telegraphing my punches since I assumed finance chairmanship. Obviously, I have considered some of the issues in regards to special funds. I am a firm believer that we've got to start looking at reevaluating all special funds, and if there is no overriding need to keep a special fund, and whether it's a program that's expired. I think, did we get rid of the South Pacific Games Fund? I think we did. But if there funds like that, which just occurred over the past couple of years, where we have South Pacific Games, when the heck was that? Anyway.
Yeah, just a point of information. Yeah. There was a law that was passed that I had introduced that sets up a process for closing funds that are no longer active. And it was based upon the recommendation of the Office of the Inspector General. So it's for these special funds that are no longer active, and we want to clean up the books. I mean, there's a process now in place, and we work with the public auditor on that also. Yeah. So correct. I think it's these program funds that are actually active. We may consider to kind of.
And that's why I'm going to reconsider, because you're correct. We have Department of Administration working with the public auditor, and with that, those actually, I think the administration has it in their power at this point, in collaboration with the public auditor. But again, I'm a firm believer also that we've got to again reevaluate. I think that was a good law, by the way, Senator. We've got to take a good look at our government accounting. There's a complexity here. If there is no need for this particular program or this particular special fund, then eliminate that fund and have it go back into the general fund. I am open, and I'm open to consideration again for the reestablishment of this fund. But again, my caution to that again, and again mainly because philosophically I'm more akin now towards reducing special funds rather than creating special funds. But with that, again, those are my comments. Obviously, now you're feeling the brunt of the pain on the general fund because there has been an appropriation. In fact, that's the funny thing, isn't it? The irony of all this: when there wasn't an appropriation, you had the money and you were paying your bills on time. When you have the appropriation, you don't get the money.
I was going to say,
irony of all ironies.
The real irony is that I think I'm probably the one that's taken the biggest budget cut in the entire government because mine's 9 3/4% finance charge that I'm paying the bank.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Speaker Calvo. Senator Espada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to make this real fast because I think that we kind of strayed from the issue. And that, Mr. Sanford, you stated just previously that expenditures for the accountancy board is around $350,000 to $400,000. I noticed that your budget's after reduction is going to come out about $434,000. So the question then begs: is there a little room to cut a little bit more?
Actually, from a cut point of view, I'm not sure how that would work, but the way I was reading this thing, and I'm not sure I read this correctly, but I think this number was actually based on our estimated revenues, and if this is supposedly coming up to the revenues, if you cut this, you're actually cutting your revenue estimate. Maybe I'm reading this thing wrong. I just got it this afternoon, but I can assure you that we're going to spend less money than what's here.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Senator Espadon. Senator Shimazan.
I spoke earlier, but just a point of information. Dave, how did you, this budget now your funds is being appropriated from the full general fund. But prior to that, it was not. Who releases the money to you? I mean, when they come into you, do they write the checks payable to the Treasurer of Guam or to
Senator, our monies were always written to the Treasurer of Guam. All the monies we collected have always been deposited with the Treasurer of Guam. Okay. And then we submitted our
vouchers,
expenditure things to BBMR, and because we were the special fund and I guess the revenues were always appropriated, I'm not sure, Senator, but then they would approve the expenditures.
So really, it's you didn't have all this money when it was your special fund up at your...
No.
It always went into the general fund. There's always... anything made payable to the treasurer fund goes into the general fund. Only authorized people are able to pull out the money from the general fund. And in this case, it is BBMR who releases the money and Department of Administration cuts the check. Am I not correct?
Correct.
So
correct.
But just to set, at least in my mind, that you went through the process and you depended on the process. You submitted your budget, and BBMR is the agency, administration, and so I'm trying to keep in my mind whether, well, what happened in the past, whether it's illegal or not illegal. But if there is any fiduciary responsibility, go ahead. I'm sorry.
From what Michelle is saying, that in the past, the budget was submitted to and approved by the board itself, which I guess the board felt like it had the authority to do that under the law. And then it was always transmitted to, it was always transmitted to the legislature and the Ways and Means Committee, et cetera, et cetera. I think it may have just kind of fallen out of one of the actual bills one of the budget bills in the past or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's why I said,
most of that happened before I was there anyway. So.
yeah, like I said, I wasn't there then, but now I understand. You did everything that you were required to do. Your board, of course, approved the budget to be submitted to the legislature
Right.
and to whoever was in charge, whether it was Ways and Means and so on. And then from there, it's incorporated into the public law. So the bill that we're looking at now is to amend the budget. And in that original budget was your in public law, I think the 27, the current budget act, is your agency was in there, right?
Right. Yes, it was.
Yeah. It was there. So right now it's always you're legitimate. I mean,
We're an agency, but we just don't have any funds.
no, but that was under the special fund.
Yes.
The current budget as it is today is still special fund. No?
No, it was eliminated in last year's budget act.
Okay, so that's it. That's what I was saying. It was eliminated in last year's budget, put you over to the general fund. So you're now in the general fund as of the budget 207.
Right.
But
07.
prior to that, you did all the process, and
Correct.
the releases were coming through as a result of your submission of your vouchers or to BBMR, cut the checks, and so forth. So it's
That's
not that
correct.
you're just writing out your checks. And okay,
No.
that's clear in my mind. I think there's what I just saw, and it was just a difference in between between the accountancy board, the professional engineering board, and the contractors board. All has their own special fund. Yours just kind of stood out.
Correct.
And I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Simsu. Anyone else? Okay, if nobody else, we can dismiss the Guam Board of Accountancy. Thank you very much. Let's take a 1 minute
Thank
recess while we get the Guam Contractors Licensing Board. Thank you.
Session. We're sub-item X, Guam Contractors License Board. And, one of the first question, Mr. Is, can you live with the cut?
I believe at this time there has been no cut to the revenues that we've submitted. It's been status quo.
So there's no cut at the Guam Contractors License Board.
I believe what is showing is exactly reflects what's in the bill.
Okay, by the way, do you have the number of people working for the Guam Contractors License Board, and also your budget, and the amount that's released, and your balance?
Yes, sir.
Can you give it to the Mr. Pukaigi and have it copied? Give everybody a copy of it?
You're speaking to the appropriations of accounts?
Yeah, the amount appropriated to you and the number of employees working under the Guam Contractors License Board. At the meantime, I will open the floor for questioning. Okay, well, we'll recess for about a minute to make a copy of this, and we'll recess until tomorrow at 9. Huh? Okay, the committee of the whole is now back in order. Can you provide that, okay, make sure that all the members have a copy of that, of your allotment and cash release and the number of employees? Okay?
All right.
And so your excuse, thank you.
Thank you, Spear.
That's fast, isn't it?
That was fast.
Okay, your excuse. Now we would like to bring up the Board of Professional Engineers. architects and land surveyors. Okay, just a brief recess. Okay, the committee of the whole is now back in go to order. We are sub-item Y, Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, and Land Surveyors. Let's see, the 201,825 is what you have right now. That's right. And how much is the cut? 0.5%? Yes, half a percent. Can you just sort of go and briefly give us the amount that you got and?
It's less than $1,000.
Okay, and how much your total appropriation?
201,825, I believe.
Okay. Oh, and can you just briefly tell them what you do? At least give us a 1 minute synopsis.
Okay, the mission of the Professional Engineers, Architects, and Land Surveyors Board is to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the public through the regulation of the professional practice of architecture, engineering, and land surveying. And we do this through regulatory measures. We do this through education. We do this through licensing of the applicants.
Are you guys satisfied? And your entire budget is generated just from the licenses and fees and so forth?
Yes, Senator.
And your staffing pattern is the same as you submitted during your monthly reports? Yes, no change from that?
No change, no change.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Senator Respicio.
Just very quickly, earlier we heard from the Guam Board of Accountancy and how the money they generate gets deposited into the general fund, and then they're subjected to the same allotment challenges as the other departments and agencies. Are you experiencing the same situation?
Well, our revenue is deposited into a special account, but yes, we do go through BBMR for when we request for those special funds.
So your arrangement is very different from the arrangement of the Guam Board of Accountancy.
Yes, sir.
Then, that's another. I say that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, to illustrate what the good senator from Malolo earlier brought up, and how there seems to be a disparity between the Guam Board of Accountancy and the other items X and item Y in this budget, and how the current fiscal year budget treats these entities who are revenue generating, and yet two are treated very differently than the other one. I think we have an opportunity to correct that disparity. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wampan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you let us know how much, what's the average that you generate every year?
Well, for last fiscal year, it's about $200,000. We're anticipating an increase to about $253,000 this fiscal year. So hopefully by October 1st, we will have $253,000.
And what was the reason for it?
What's the we see an influx of applicants coming in from other states in anticipation of the military build-up here in Guam. And so there's a lot of business firms coming in who are practice architecture, land surveying, and engineering.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any others? Okay, we've none. Santos, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And the legislature recess until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Okay, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Call it for 9.
Okay, Senator.